So hi guys, today I'm going to do a bit of work on the potter's wheel. Now in fairness, I haven't done that much on the potter's wheel yet. I have learnt to throw for about 2 or 3 months, and then unfortunately, because I went into hospital, I had to have a bit of a break. So I haven't thrown anything for about 3 months. So, 2 months learning. Three months off. That feels wrong. What could possibly go wrong? Just been up. Right. Okay, so I guess the thing here is this could go really badly wrong very easily. Doesn't really matter that much. Just trying to get my eye back in. Someone will notice that I'm actually using a bat system. So this is what is this? A 14 inch wheel, something like that. And on it there is a wooden disc with a square bat that fits in the middle. And this is just so that I can very quickly throw something, wire it, take the whole bat off, put another one on and continue. I can't be doing with trying to edge the work off the wheel afterwards. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to watch some videos on that, then there's plenty of people who wire off and lift off their work afterwards. But for me, this is the easy way. And I made this myself. It didn't really cost anything. It was some scrap MDF and things. You'll notice that I've just wet the wooden piece in the center, and this is MDF. It happens to have an ash sort of veneer on it, but that's not really relevant. I'm making it soaking wet, just quickly doing it. And what I'm going to try and do is throw something reasonably small, probably a simple dish to hold some pieces in, and just see how that goes, and I'll talk through what's in my mind as I go along. So this is very much a beginner's video. The clay that I'm using is a very smooth clay. If I can find its number, I will tell you what it is. It's a Pottery Craft P150. So no, I got that wrong. P1530. It's a light buff stoneware. And it's designed to be fired at about cone 6, so that's absolutely fine. And I've got a kind of handful here. I was going to make a mug. This is too much for a mug, so we'll see how that goes. Now there should also be a pencil here, but it looks like most things on this desk might be missing. There's a pencil. So I'm just going to draw a little circle on this. Obviously, if you're throwing directly on the aluminium disc, then aluminium turntable, then you'll already have marks to show center, but just useful, and it gives me a bit of a guideline as to what I'm doing. And there it is. There is the clay. So this is smooth. There is no grog in it. There's no texture to it or anything like that, and it's not actually the easiest thing to throw with. So it's just kind of, we'll just tap this into the center a bit more. So this is just a very rough centering. As you can see, it's kind of, I don't know what. Now, I don't care how you go about centering your clay or how you go about getting it on the board. Some people insist you have to slap it down. You know what? If you have to use a centering tool, I don't care. This is just the mechanics of getting the thing in the middle. So let's see if I now have the core strength in my body to do this. So, okay. So let's just talk about what I'm doing. So I'm centering this on the wheel. You can actually live with a tiny bit of non-concentricity, but it's not particularly very wise to do so. You're just making life harder for yourself. And generally the way I do it is I rest my hands on both sides, link them together, and then I'm going to squeeze in with the bottom portion of my hand along here and along here. And as you can see, everything has to be completely wet and slippery. If there's any friction at all, this is not going to work. And I run the wheel quite quickly. Now, so I start off, just rest my hands on it, get everything nice and calm, tighten up my whole body, and I've got my elbows resting, and just pulling on that centre at the back, at the bottom, and then start moving up my hand, squeezing up, and I end up with a cone shape. Okay, so I'll just do that a bit more, come up there, I've got a cone shape, and then I'm just going to keep my left hand in position, get rid of that a little bit, and that is pretty much centered. It's not quite there, but I'm just going to do that one more time, get rid of some of this junk off the thing. I'll use that to squeezing in, making a little right tunnel, then bringing it back down again. Okay, and that's it. That is definitely centered now. Now if I want, I can just trim away some of this rubbish on the bottom, but I'm actually just going to use it. And sometimes you can end up with just a little bit of I don't know what you'd call it, a little bit at the bottom where it slipped under your finger. So as you saw, as I pulled in, my fingers were resting on the board at the bottom, but sometimes it doesn't quite work out perfectly. Right, so now I'm going to open this out. So essentially I'm going to compress this down a little bit, and I'm going to make a hole in it that isn't going to go all the way through. And then I'm going to reclaim my tools. Tools wise, there's not a lot of complexity here. I'll introduce them as I come to them. So I'm just going to slow this down, and whenever I take my hands on and off this, I'm always doing it very, very smoothly. So what I've done there is I'm just pressing down on the top and keeping my other hand in as a kind of support, and move my hands on and off smoothly. And now I'm going to press down in the center, and people use all sorts of different ways to do this pushing down. There's only one thing I think that everyone agrees on: it's got to be slippery in there. Some people prefer to have a very narrow sit down, and all I'm doing pretty much is really just pushing my fingers into the bottom here and letting the clay move out to the sides. So now I'm just going to measure across and see how deep that is, and to do that, grab a pointy tool, stick it in the middle, pull it out, and that is about 1 centimetre, which for this is going to be fine because I'm going to form a foot on it, which is going to have to be dealt with later. Now what I'm doing now is I'm just running backwards and forwards across the bottom to kind of compress it a little bit. And as we go along, we'll see I'll be compressing lots of pieces. And I'm just picking up the wet slip from the outside and just coating everything with it. That's because it's all got to be slippery. Now I'm just pushing in from the outside, just a shade, because it's a bit, that's the word I'm looking for, wide. Definitely wider than I would like. Again, just keeping my hands wet, pushing in, keeping everything even, and keeping everything slow, taking my time about it. So that's great. So this is going to be, I think I said, a sort of dish, a holder for, I don't know, paint brushes or whatever. So the next thing I'm going to do is make it taller. So I'm going to start off by forming a bit of a dip. So the aim here is that I'm going to form a bit of a dip, and a finger is going to go in there, and then a finger on the inside of the pot is going to push the pot out a little bit wider. Then the fingers are going to lift up in sync. So one is stretching out the pot a little bit wider, and the other one is lifting it back up again and forcing it back to be narrower. Now the very first one that I do, I'll try and do it just here. This is not a natural position for me. So the outside finger is hard against the board, the inside finger is not. And I am just going to lift that while I rotate this fairly slowly. Wasn't a great pull, but you know, it did the job. Now I'm going to place two fingers, one on either side here. Part of the problem there was it actually got a little bit dry, so it's a bit tentative. One on either side to hold it in place, and then I'm going to press down on the top, and that's just to make sure the top gets compressed. Then I'm going to bring both my hands around the sides again, slow it down a bit. I'm just going to lightly press in and lift my hand, and it's very difficult to show this. My thumbs are together on the back, my fingers on the front, these fingers here for stability, squeezing a little bit and lifting. And what I'm doing here is I'm sort of collaring this in, just a bit more lubrication to get a more straight-sided consistent height. Pressing on the top again. Okay, so there we go. This is pretty smooth and flat now. It's a little bit wide at the bottom, so I'm just going to squeeze in there. Happy with that. Picking up the slip, making it wet. Now normally I work a lot faster than this. It's kind of because I'm slowed down a lot because I'm just on my way through it. So here we go, the bottom. So now my fingers won't really reach. So I'm going to use two hands, and people have all sorts of ways of holding their fingers for this. The most important thing is you have a stable platform. Your hands, for as long as possible, are linked together so everything moves in sync. Yeah, everything is very, very slippy on the inside and outside. And we form a dent underneath. We let the wheel do a full revolution, and then we start lifting. The inner finger is slightly higher than the outer finger. And I'm easing up pressure as I get to the top. Now we'll come back again, and we're going to just straighten everything up. So no, it's not too bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. So the difficulty with this particular clay is that it looks okay because it's actually quite dry as I'm working with it, but it has no kind of strength. It just kind of goes where my fingers push it, which sounds good, but with no kind of resistance to that, it can very easily turn into just a sloppy, horrible mess. Now this is getting fairly thin for this particular clay, so there's every possibility that on this third lift I could get into serious trouble. So I've formed this little section underneath again. I'm just going to bring this in a bit more at the top. So as a general principle, keep it as narrow as you can for as long as you can. And the simple reason for that is it's more stable. So I'm going to push out off on the inside and then start lifting. From the outside, trying to keep everything nice and steady. As I get towards the top, being very, very careful. Okay, there we go, we're getting some height now. Now a lot of people say that three pulls, these vertical movements are called pulls, even though You're not really pulling, you're more kind of compressing and moving the clay. So a lot of people say that 3 is the limit, the clay will give up at that. I think in practice you probably need to look at the clay and see what it's doing. Now for me this is slightly tricky now because I've got big fingers. So I'm trying to just dribble some water down the inside there. I'm just letting this open out a little bit so I can get my fingers in it. If you've got a small hand, this is where you get the helpful bit. Now there's not much width on this, so I have to be a bit more careful here. So I'm going to push out. And just as before, taking my hands away very, very carefully. I'm not unhappy with that. What I've done is I've allowed my little finger just to trail over the surface to leave an actual texture. I don't know if I'm going to leave that in or not. But that is basically it. So it's pretty thin at the top. It's about 5mm thick. It's a little bit thick at the bottom, and that's because of the clay that I'm using. I can't afford for it to go thin at the bottom because it just won't support the weight. I could turn this into a fairly large mug. I could open it out a little bit, make it a little bit bigger for something. Let's do that. There's actually a little bit of clay at the bottom. I could probably still lift this just a shade. So I think I'm fairly happy with that. It's quite a nice shape actually. I'm going to just so what I'm doing here is just straightening the edges. I'll bring these in just a shade, but not a lot. And I'll put my hands on both sides of that and just compress it down just to make sure that I'm not actually trying to round it off here particularly, although that's a side benefit. Just trying to make sure it's actually got compressed clay in there. I don't think you can see it on the outside, but the inside is just beginning to pick up a little bit of a ripple, which means I can't just keep lifting this. It will give way if I do that repeatedly. There's enough material on the bottom here to make a foot, so I'm hoping to just come down and have a little bit of a foot shape. I'll do that there, a little bit of a foot shape on the bottom, but I'm not really going to try and form that just now. And I've got to decide whether I'm going to actually form this into any more shape at all. I think I will. Now before I do too much more, I'm actually just going to take a sponge, put that in the bottom, and remove any liquid that's left. The reason I'm doing this now is because later I won't be able to get at it. So you take that opportunity where you've got the opportunity. So what do we want shape wise? So I think I'm just going to bring it in just a shade. So I'm very, very gently just compressing this in the center section. Just let my hands drift upwards just to ensure that everything stays central. So I think I'm going to do that again. Just need a bit more stuff on my hands. That's better. And I'm just trying to get a nice consistent shape. I think we're not quite there at the moment. It's better to take your time. We'll use this, which is called a rib. I'm not washing it to lubricate it, I'm just washing it to get some rubbish off it. So what I'm doing is just using my finger against the rib, moving my finger slowly up, to gradually develop the shape that I want. Again, I can see there's just a little bit of water on the inside, so I'm going to try and get down to that without touching the inside anymore. We do not want water left in the bottom of the pot. If you remember at the start, I compressed the bottom of the pot. Now I'm making sure the water's out of the bottom of the pot. I'm just going to cut down this bottom corner. Hang on a minute. My knife is blunt. Yep, that's great. Just to form a starter for the foot when I do it. Now I'm just running in a pointy tool into the bottom of this excess piece. We'll just take that off, and there we have it. I think there's a good likelihood, given there's a fair amount of material at the bottom, that I might actually do some carving into this. So I'm fairly happy with that as a first attempt after a few months. That's not too bad. Move my fingers out of it so I don't catch one there. I'm just going to turn this lightly and move my thing through. Now that did actually move off centre, so that's actually not a problem. But one of the useful things using a bat like this sometimes is when you cut through, it stays on centre, and then it lightly adheres when it's dried, and you can actually then do any trimming and finishing off on the top here. Now I haven't sponged this top corner and done things like that because I am expecting to carve this now. A lot of people would wrap a little bit of chamois leather across here, something like that, just to smooth off this top, which is absolutely fine. And certainly if you're going to work straight off the wheel and just put it in the kiln, you'd want to do that. But yeah, this is basically done, and it's fine. Quick wash of the hands. Grab a sponge. Just have a quick walk around. That's great. Wipe that off. I won't around this front edges more to keep me clean than anything else. Okay, and we can pop these out. Oh yeah, look, someone snapped the point on the knife. I wonder I had problems with that. So normally when I'm cutting into the corner there, it cuts in very cleanly and easily, and I was wondering why it wasn't, and it turns out that the end of the knife has been snapped. So this is just a wooden knife. I've got another one somewhere. There we go. So this was just made out of a piece of leftover ash that I had, and all I did was cut it roughly to shape and then sort of fettle it down, finish it with a bit of sandpaper. That was it. You don't need to spend a lot. And that's it.